Welcome everyone to the Lofi Poli Sci podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pickering. That's right, Lo-Fi as in low fidelity, low quality, in your face, messy as can be, global news show. It's Tuesday, Lo-Fi Nation, and you know what that means. It's time for Tuesday's Top 10 list. Every Tuesday, we look at global indicators and surveys to see what countries hold the top 10 rankings in particular categories. We'll cover things like oldest countries, freest countries, happiest countries, and more. And no worries, Lo-Fi listener. We'll cover what each category means before we jump into the list. Today's top 10 list, the freest countries in the world. And actually, it's a top 11 because some countries were tied. But how, you may ask, do we know which countries are the freest countries out there? And right, you are to ask. Today's list comes from data provided by the organization Freedom House. Freedom House scores countries from 0 to 100 based on the levels of civil liberties and civil rights in a country. The more freedoms the people have, the higher the score goes. And it's as simple as that. Actually, it's not quite that simple, but hey, this is only a 5-minute podcast, so we just don't have time to go into it. Though I encourage you to dig deeper, Lo-Fi listener. Now, straight to it, the list. Coming in and tied for number 11 are New Zealand, Ireland, Australia, and Denmark, all having scores of 97 out of 100. Tied for number 7 is Canada, Uruguay, and Luxembourg with a 98 out of 100. And coming in at number 4 with a spot all to themselves, the Netherlands with a 99 out of 100. And tied for our top spot at number 3, a 5 count to see if you can guess. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if you said Sweden, Norway, and Finland, you are absolutely correct with scores of 100 out of 100. Now, all that being said, let's dig into this list and the details. First off, you will likely notice that 6 of these 10 countries, or 11 countries, are European countries. The remaining 4 are Uruguay, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. Furthermore, you probably realize that the top 3 countries are all Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. And finally, you also surely realized that these 11 countries all have 97 to 100 scores. Meaning in reality, there's very little difference as far as the level of freedoms enjoyed by their citizens. But potentially, the biggest takeaway from this list is a question. How can it be possible for a country, any country, much less 3 countries, to have perfect scores for civil liberties and civil rights for their people? And that, my friend, is the question of the day and the topic of our discussion. Firstly, I'll go ahead and tell you I completely disagree with Freedom House giving perfect scores to countries based on levels of freedoms. As I like to say, democratization, the process of becoming a more free democracy, is always and everywhere an unfinished process. There's always more work to do as far as helping people fighting discrimination in a country. The short? No country is perfect. Simple as that. But how, then, did our top 3 countries get perfect scores? Well, that's a matter of how the countries are actually scored in and of itself. You see, Freedom House has a survey of very particular questions that evaluate the freedoms of a country. And each of these questions are worth different point values, generally 3 to 4 points. And depending on how a country scores in each particular question, these scores are then added together and create the overall 0 to 100 score that we have. So because of this scoring method, it is possible to have a 100 out of 100. What we should take from this, though, is that these countries are extremely free, but that they are not at all perfect. And if you're curious where your country or your favorite country are on this list of freedoms, go to Freedom House's website. They have a cool, interactive map that you can click around and see the freedom scores of all the countries of the world. And I use the word cool, full well knowing that this is a nerd thing to say. What can I say? I'm a poli-sci guy. Of course I'm a nerd, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But this conversation about the freest countries in the world is perhaps the easy part of the conversation. Next week, we look at the 10 least free countries in the world. A list that surely is more complicated to comprehend. But that's this Tuesday's Top 10 list. Always remember that Lofi Poli Sci is more than just me. It's the we that we be. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, wash those hands, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Lofi Poli Sci podcast. Pickering, signing off.